So the two Johns, John Grant and John Power, get in the Valiant and they drive down to Racecourse Road, Flemington, near the police station, and they go to a pizza shop and they order pizzas, plural, and they take them back to the flat at Canning Street where they've left their mate Tommy Collins with Julie Garciacelay. And when they get there, Power says something in what you would call criminal slang, rhyming slang. He says, I wonder if Tommy's tried the sour. And Johnny Grant understood what he meant. It was rhyming slang for sour grape, which in old-time criminal slang is slang for rape. I wonder if Tommy's gone for the sour or gone the sour. And they pause outside the door and listen, and they can't hear any noise. And after a few minutes, they knock on the door, and the door's opened by either Collins or Julie Garciacelay. Apparently, this is all filtered through the statements made later by the three men. So as far as we know, the door was opened by one of them, and they go in, and the story goes that they consumed the pizzas and they consumed more beer. And according to the statements that Grant and Collins later made, at least at some point Julie Garciacelay says, look, I've got to go and make a phone call for my sister. Now, her sister worked at the telephone exchange, probably worked shifts, and her sister Gail was out that night. She'd gone and stayed elsewhere, and she'd left a note with a phone number on it and some coins, like 20-cent pieces, and said, can you please go down to the phone box, because they didn't have a phone there, and ring this number at my work and tell them that I'm sick and I won't be in tomorrow. Just a little white lie, the sort of thing that people do. And at some point in the evening, according to John Grant and to Tommy Collins, this is what Julie Garciacelay did. She took the note and she took the coins and she left the flat and she went down to the phone box. Now, their story, the three men's story, independently given, is that she never returned, that they waited in the flat and she didn't come back. And we have to take that maybe with a grain of salt, or maybe we take it at face value, because I, for one, am not going to call John Grant a liar, because it may be that she did go down, or she did go outside saying she had to make a phone call, and that she stayed outside. She might have thought, three guys getting more drunk in my flat, don't really love it. I think I'll just stay outside for a while and see if I can sit it out and wait until they leave. That is a possibility. Anyway, the story goes, their story is that they waited, she didn't come back, and so they left. The words they used was the night was getting a bit stale, and so they packed up and went. Now, they got in the Valiant, and according to John Grant, they drove Tommy Collins home to the suburb of Rosanna, and he got out of the car and went into his house. And then, says John Grant, they drove back all the way back to the city from Rosanna. And he said that John Joseph Power dropped him outside the Truth office in Latrobe Street, which of course is at the north end of the city, which is pretty close to North Melbourne, like 3 minutes drive away, 4 minutes drive away. And John Grant says that he went inside, I think he said he went inside to make a phone call to his boss to say, can I take a taxi voucher, which in those days reporters used to do. They'd get drunk and then they'd get a taxi voucher to go home. Common thing. And he says that he got a taxi voucher and he went home. What I wonder is, why didn't John Joseph Power, having dropped the other guy to Rosanna, why hadn't he dropped this bloke off as well? Because I think he lived closer to the city. But who knows? They're probably drunk and not thinking straight. Who knows what goes on? But what we do know is this, that on John Grant's say-so, the last he sees of John Joseph Power is him driving off in Latrobe Street. This is late at night. Let's say it's between 11 and 12, quite late. There is a scenario here that I am speculating about. I don't know what happened. No one knows what happened. But is it possible that John Joseph Power, a man already accused 3 years earlier of killing a woman, a man who subsequently was convicted of stabbing a 19-year-old woman, another one, a man who subsequently served something like 30 years in jail, a very violent offender and a very violent sex offender, a man who offended against women. Is it not possible that he drove off and then circled back to North Melbourne and went to that flat and knocked on the door with some excuse like I left my jumper here or whatever, and got his way back into the flat, where he then attacked Julianne Garciacelay and then wrapped her body in the black cape which was found to be missing from the flat next day, and took with him the carving knife which was also found to be missing next day when Sister Gail gets home and is horrified to find the flat empty but with blood stains on the couch and the carpet, and finds that the cape is gone and the carving knife is gone, and also that her sister's underwear has been scattered around. This, of course, raises very grave doubts about the safety of her sister at that stage. It looks as if she's been abducted and killed, or killed and abducted. None of it good. The Sister Gail doesn't get there until late-ish next day and then raises the alarm. By the time John Grant gets to work at the Truth next day, some of his colleagues know about what's happened because they're very close to the police, these guys. They all knew each other, and the editor of Truth and the news editor of Truth and senior reporters at Truth had very good police contacts. And as soon as John Grant gets in there, Jack Darmody and others said to him, "What have you been up to? What happened last night? The Copperas are all over this. That girl that works here, the American girl in the library, she's disappeared and there's blood in the flat. What the hell's gone on?" John Grant says, "You're kidding me." He is either genuinely surprised or he acts surprised. We have to give him the benefit of the doubt and say he is genuinely surprised. He goes to the pub with Jack Darmody, his older colleague, who's a wise old guy, and they have a few beers, and he and Darmody soon work out that Grant, is going to be at the centre of a homicide investigation where the police are probably going to ask him very hard questions about who he was with. And being street smart, he realises that he doesn't want to be saying anything about those two men, Power and Collins, that might implicate them in a homicide, because that would be a good way of getting himself shot.